Open, first meeting of course in 2022. Welcome to each and every one of you. Thank you for your contribution in the last year. Also can I welcome our senior staff who are here, CEO Brian and the GMs who are here today. Can I also recognise those watching this online and thank them very much for taking an interest in what's happening in their region. Can I begin today by recognising the passing of Barry Rafferty, a former Alderman of the Toomba City Council, and a major contributor to this society in Toomba. I think those of us who knew him and followed him through our lives would know that he had a lot to do with basketball, he had a lot to do with pickets, he did an awful lot in this community apart from being an alderman, but he had a real passion for this community. I recently had the privilege of speaking to his dinner group, and you know, the fact that the very feeling, speaking to that group of people who are over 60 and having dinner together, you know, showed me the passion that that man had. So our thoughts and prayers are with his family, and I guess at times like this we're thankful for the contribution that he made to this community to make it a better place. So if I can just place that on the public record. Also, Carol, with our thoughts and prayers are with you today on the anniversary of your good husband Roger's passing. Councillors, will begin by acknowledging the Aboriginal parties whose songlines traverse these lands we meet on today. The Western Waka Waka, the Guybil, the Jarrawa, and of course in the western area the Bigginbul people. And can I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the knowledge, the rich traditions and the bold ambitions of Australia's first people. We just recognise the fact that Councillor O'Shea has been granted leave of absence and is not present today. Is there anybody else wishing to apply for leave of absence? Councillor Melissa Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I request a leave of absence for the ordinary meeting February 15th, 2022, and also if a special meeting is scheduled for the 16th of February 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Would someone like to move that be granted? Councillor Carroll and Councillor Rebecca. Those in favour? Councillor Shine.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Just request leave for the probable absence on the second, for the special meeting on the 2nd of February. Thank you.
Would someone like to move accordingly, please? Councillor Rebecca has moved. Councillor Melissa Taylor has seconded that. Those in favour? Motion's carried. Anyone else seeking leave of absence? If not, councillors, we'll move to the confirmation of the minutes. In item 3, firstly, item 3.1, the special meeting of council on the 13th of December 2021, at which all councillors were present. Would someone like to move the receipt of those minutes and they be a true and proper record? Councillor O'Hara-Sullivan has moved. Councillor McDonald has seconded. Those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 3.2, the ordinary meeting of council on the 14th of December 2021, at which all councillors were present. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Megan O'Hara-Sullivan and Councillor McDonald again. Those in favour? That's carried. Move then to item 3.3, the special meeting of council on the 15th of December 2021, at which all were present. Would someone like to move that, please? Councillor Shine and Councillor Rebecca. Those in favour? That's carried. That concludes the confirmation of the various minutes that we've had. Is there any business arising from the minutes that anyone wishes to discuss now? It can be brought up later, of course, but if there's anything that needs to be brought out now, there's an opportunity for you to do that. Okay, we move to item 5, which is the presentation of petitions. Is there any petition to be presented today? No petitions. Move then to item 6, which is business that I may wish to bring to the meeting with or without notice. There's nothing that I'm bringing forward today at this point in time. We'll move then to item 7, the reception of deputations and delegations by appointment. I would assume there's no delegations or deputations today. Okay, we'll move then to item 8, which is the monthly financial performance statement. Anne-Marie Johnson, would you present that, please?
Morning, Mayor, Councillors. So the purpose of this report, Councillors, is to present you with the monthly financial performance statement as required by Section 204 of the Local Government Regulation. This report is to the 31st of December and also our halfway mark through the year, so it's a good indication of how we're going. In Diligent Boards on page 12 of 548, you will notice that our unrestricted cash ratio at the 31st of December is 5.26 months, or 116.8 million. This is against the Queensland Treasury Corporation target of 3.6 months, so we're travelling very well there. Outstanding rates and charges. So, councillors, we measure outstanding rates and charges at the 31st of December and the 30th of June each year. We have a target of 5%. So you can see we're travelling 11.8 million or 4.17% at the 31st of December. That's compared with 12.6 million or 4.56 at the 30th of June, or 12.5 million and 4.6 at the 31st of December 2020. So a really good result for the rates and revenue collection team there. The Department of Resources have advised Council on the 6th of December that an annual evaluation will take place effective the 30th of June, with the valuations to be issued on the 31st of March. So I suppose there's no real surprise there with the movement in property of late that we've had another valuation so quickly. And page 18 of 548 counts our consolidated financial performance statement. And at this point in time, overall operating income and operating expenditure are tracking to budget with variance of less than 1%. So it's a good result there overall. However, I do need to draw your attention to the labour variance, 3.7 million under budget at this point in time, or 6%. This variance includes the estimated EBA pay increase and back pay for all staff, and also includes vacancies of 175 at the 31st of December, so the highest number of vacancies there. This under budget, this underspend amount helps to offset the overspend in material services and other expenditure, which we are very closely monitoring at this stage, and we will be bringing to councillors as part of the budget review too, the February budget review, and how we're proposing to manage that current overspend. We advised previously that we know we've had a significant increase in insurances within our construction and maintenance team. We have significant overspend in that area, with vacancies resulting in contract labour being engaged. So we will be moving budget from labour to materials to offset that additional increase. Capital, again, the capital income is tracking to budget, but capital expenditure at this point in time, 30% of our capital works programme has been delivered. Again, budget review 2 will be an opportunity for us to review our capital works in light of the current vacancies, material shortages, contract labour shortage, and see how we need to adjust that capital works programme.
Thanks very much, General Manager Anne-Marie. Is there any questions for Anne-Marie in respect to the monthly financial performance statement? Councillor Shine.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mayor. Just wondering if you go back to the start where you mentioned the unrestricted cash expenses ratio. Could you just expand on that as to what it means, and is it good to be high or low? Bearing in mind, for example, in November it exceeded the 6%.
So it's good to remain within the target set by Queensland Treasury Corporation. That's between that 3 to 6 months. So just after we have levied rates, or the rates payment due date, we know we'll be a little bit cashed up, so we'd expect to be sitting at the higher end of that ratio. It's up towards 6%. And when we get closer to, time to levy rates again, we'd see that figure starting to drop.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Summerfield and then Councillor McMahon.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Anne-Marie. Just going to the CapEx section, and I know we discussed this yesterday in a workshop, but for the interest of viewers online, I'd like to have a discussion about the Capital Works program, which is less than a third spent in the first half of the year. The pandemic response is less than a half spent, and the quarantine projects is less than 10% spent in this first 6 months of the year. And I note that Water and Waste are bringing in consultants to ramp up their CapEx spend, but I'm unaware what that cost is. I'm just wondering, is ELT and Finance comfortable with the spend to date in the CapEx program, given that it's so much underspend already in this first 6 months? Thanks.
So I can assure councillors that the main topic of conversation for ELT at this point in time is the underspend in capital and the overspend in materials, and the steps that our executive team are taking to address those issues. So that is the main topic. Bringing in consultants to help deliver the programme, because we have so many vacancies and it's an extremely tight labour market. So we found ourselves going out to the market advertising positions and getting very little response at this point. But we're not on our own. Most organisations are feeling the same pressure. When we engage, whether it's labour, contractors, materials for capital, all of that is part of the capital programme and can be capitalised, all of those costs. So whether it's our own labour in-house or whether it's contractors, it's capitalised to the cost of the project, so part of the delivery of the capital works.
Okay, thank you. Extra, if I could follow on.
Yes, thanks. That's fine.
Thanks, Mayor. So I just wonder, Anne-Marie, has consideration been given, and I'm glad that ELT are making it a priority, just wondering, is there consideration being given to outsourcing due to lack of staff, which was acknowledged again yesterday, outsourcing any of these projects, understanding also that the private sector is also under pressure? I just wonder whether Council is investigating that.
Yes, we certainly are investigating that, but as you've said, we know when we went to tender before Christmas that the number of tenders was the lowest we've received for some of these significant capital works. So I suppose that would lean towards an inability to deliver the capital works programme as adopted at the ordinary meeting. So there we will be looking at reducing that project at BR2.
Does that satisfy you, Councillor Summerfield, or you've had your question answered? Councillor McMahon.
Oh, thanks, Chair. My question was very much in line with Councillor Shine's. I'm happy to move to the next person. Thank you.
Councillor Carl, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Anne-Marie, given the quantum of spend for contract labour for the outputs that we would normally experience, outputs versus cost of labour, when we come to, I gather, a reprioritisation of the capital works program, are we looking at critical and essential service and infrastructure, more importantly, in redefining the extent of our capital works? I would assume we would be. I would hate to think that we would unnecessarily be spending money at potentially 3 times the price minimum for contract labour to deliver projects that weren't essentially important.
So I think I need to clarify in that area. The contract labour that has been engaged is primarily delivering operational works. So this second half of this financial year, particularly in C&M, the focus will be on the delivery of capital works programme. But the main focus for the first 6 months has been delivering operational works. We've had a 41% increase in pathway requests for renewal works, and we've had flood recovery works as well.
Okay. So,
Any further questions? If not, someone prepared to move the receipt of the monthly financial performance statement, please. Councillor McMahon has moved that. Councillor McDonald has seconded that. Any questions? Those in favour? It's carried. At this point, as we move into the group reports, can I recognise the senior staff in the room and each of us, and also read out our values. The 5 values we have are accountability, safety and wellbeing, teamwork, honesty and respect, as we work together collectively to improve the culture and the wellbeing of all of our staff within this community. And I think now is probably as appropriate a time as any to just bring that forward and put it on the table. We'll move then to the group reports in item 9. The first report from Planning and Development is item 9.1. Stuart.
Morning, councillors and Mr Mayor. The group report for Planning and Development is on your agenda, and I'd be very happy to take any questions in relation to the matters contained therein.
Councillor Von Hoff, you have a question for the GM?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much, Stuart. On the first page, you talk about the second dot point, the Toomba CBD and Railway Park Lanes Priority Development Area Expert Advisory Panel, and some of the work they're doing. And I just wanted to know who's on that?
So, who's on the expert?
Who's on the panel?
It's a large panel of about 15 experts, ranging through engineers, architects, urban designers, and so on, a whole range of relevant experts from...
Not just within council, but outside council as well?
Outside, yeah, okay. External. It's an external panel of experts. Yep.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the GM? Councillor Shine, then Councillor McDonald, followed by Councillor Summerfield.
Thanks, Mayor. Just in relation to that dot point, that same matter, I take it reading that expert advisory panel has been asked to do some work on the CBD lighting strategy and on the shop top living issue. Is that how I read that correctly?
Yes,
Yeah,
they've been
okay.
asked for some comments and advice on that. Yeah.
Has there been any progress made? Are you aware of that shop top living aspect?
By progress, you mean applications from applicants, or
No,
because
progress
the policy
in
itself's
terms of
adopted?
the panel coming up with some ideas
And,
as to
yeah, no,
what incentives.
I haven't heard. What I'll do is seek advice
Yeah,
and,
sorry, I
and
should
get back
have
to
given you notice.
council on what advice may have been
sorry.
forthcoming from the panel on that.
Councillor McDonald.
Thanks, thanks, Mr Mayor. Through you to GM Stuart. Stuart, on page 20 of 548, we talk about 6 RALs that have been approved in December, the reconfiguration of a lot. Can you just tell us what the quantum of how many lots in total of those 6 RALs there might be for
That's
December?
a very good question. I don't have that information on that, which would be helpful if it was.
You might be able to email it through, perhaps.
I can certainly do that.
Yep. Thanks.
Councillor Summerfield, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Thanks, General Manager Stewart. I just wondered, the expert advisory panel is very popular this morning. The scope of the CBD lighting strategy has been handed to them as well, and I'm just wondering what sort of timeline are we looking at here, because this is something that could be really quite rejuvenating for our CBD and totally change the atmosphere at night.
Yes.
And maybe even provide a safer environment as well, but really encouraging people to come down and enjoy the CBD. Can you give us some sort of timeline on when we're likely to start getting some rungs on the board with progress of this, please?
Yep. What I'll do is I'll check out what advice we have had, and I'll get a response probably through Jade in terms of what we are doing to move that forward. It'll involve a number of GMs across the organisation to do that. And I certainly understand where councillors are coming from on that. Over Christmas, I went to Emerald, and even though Councillor Megan had already mentioned Emerald, I'd forgotten that Emerald had a beautiful main street with lighting, all sorts of tree lighting and building lighting and things like that. So it was quite inspirational. So yes, I'll take that up and I'll get back to councillors in the next couple of days with an email just on that matter. Yep.
Councillor Carol Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a comment, if I might, and thank you, Stuart. Just a comment on the heritage and architectural service that we offer, and how to look at just for the month of December that our community keeps engaging with that, which is really great. And in our CBD in particular, it's such a beautiful CBD, and we see us congratulated, our community congratulated for the beautiful buildings that are there. It seems to me that they're being valued more and more, and it's a wonderful service that we offer. So it's great to see that whilst we offer it, that people are taking advantage of it. And if you have a look, 21 heritage advice actions undertaken for December, that's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
To be quite honest with you. So would you pass my congratulations back to the team? And I'd like to congratulate the community for engaging with it and looking to make our area better.
Yep, and
Thank you.
You can see it happening as you drive around the character areas. Every street
It's
basically
lovely.
has houses being done up, being painted, it's wonderful to see.
And absolutely, you're right. If you go around, it's true. There's something happening everywhere. So the street frontage, it does nothing but enhance our area. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Councillor Carroll. Any further questions for the GM? Stuart, late last year I had the absolute pleasure of attending the opening of the MS Queensland building in Hume Street.
Yep.
And in the discussion I had with some of those people, I think there's potential for us to become more heavily involved in social housing here. And as you probably know, we've had a very short discussion about the possibility of Councillor O'Hara-Sullivan and I having a chat with Jade in respect to the availability of that land. One of the things I did find out was the external funding that's readily available for that kind of project to the not-for-profit sector. And I just put on notice that I'll be hopefully working with Councillor O'Hara-Sullivan to develop something to bring to council down the track about just a policy around social housing, which I think we need at many levels. So yeah, I'll be using your resources as the main part of the message.
And certainly I think Jade is already getting involved in that. And we've also got some briefings coming up to council very soon in regard to some of that material. Particularly, I think we've got Brisbane Housing Company coming to talk to us.
Yes, I see that.
And there'll be lots of fertile ground in which to sort of try and plant seeds there, hopefully, in terms of getting that sort of organisation actively engaged in our area, using government money, federal money, state money, and that organisation's money as well.
Yes, and looking after those who need looking after, but also providing the jobs that will flow from that. There's also, of course, the state government-owned land in Toomba that would be quite suitable for, and maybe they need to be involved in this discussion as well.
Over 100 acres.
Yes. Councillor Summerfield, do you have a question?
Yeah, if I could just get some clarification on that, please, Mr Mayor. You'll be aware that I've been absent quite a bit of the last part of last year with illness, and I may have missed some of the workshops discussing this. I just wondered, could you clarify, are we actually actively purchasing land as a council, or are we being a medium for state and federal government to purchase land for social housing?
No, the idea that came to my mind was that we do in fact own land, and there was a report came to council, and you may not have been here, about the land that we in fact own. And while it's a long shot, the thought came to myself, and I know Councillor O'Hara-Sullivan and I had a discussion about the land that we own, And would any of it be suitable for social housing? And could we in some way become involved in that whole long-term process of providing social housing in Toomba? And I think it's something worth putting on the table, frankly.
Thank you. So I'm guessing, help me here, are you and Councillor O'Hara-Sullivan going to bring a suggestion to councillors to workshop, or what is the...
Well, there's a workshop coming in this week. I think tomorrow was there from Brisbane.
That's right.
Brisbane Group. And I just think we should just begin to think about it. I think we should develop it slowly. Nothing is firmly planned at this point in time, but I do hope that in view of the opportunity that exists here with external funding coming to support this kind of housing in Toomba and the need for it, that we can begin a journey down this particular pathway.
Yeah, it's certainly very interesting, and I'd be keen for us to all sit down and have a discussion around it. So perhaps a strategic workshop for councillors, not including a Brisbane entity coming up here, but for councillors to discuss a way forward, what we feel as an organisation, the 11 councillors around the room, to work out what we think we should do moving forward. We certainly have a need for social housing in Toowoomba. We need to understand what role we as a council play, I guess, is my wondering. Thank you.
Councillor Summerfield, this is very, very preliminary stuff, and I think the next step would be to prepare something so that all councillors can get an understanding and potentially an endorsement of a pathway forward.
Councillor Megan's got a question.
Councillor Megan.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. If I could just provide some clarification for Councillor Summerfield. So tomorrow we've got a briefing with Jade, who has engaged a firm to do a feasibility study on what land we do have available and what it is that council's expecting from a project like a social housing project. So what is it that we want? What are the things that we expect if we are to provide some land? What is it that we expect from that? So, you know, if there's car parks there, what car parks we're expecting in return as a part of a project? What part would be social? What part would be affordable? What part would be private? So, not just limiting ourselves to one company in it by any sense, but finding out what it is that council expects from a project like that, and so that's coming tomorrow. Yeah.
I think the other aspect, sorry, Councillor, the other aspect to that is that the not-for-profit housing companies that have been set up by government and major councils, Brisbane City Council in particular, and Gold Coast, they tend to build developments that are not aimed at ultimately becoming a ghetto. What they try to do is they have a 30-30-30 mix of social housing, affordable housing, and housing for the normal market to purchase. So they try and mix and match that in most of their larger developments so that we don't end up building problems.
Thank you, and thanks, Councillor O'Hara-Sullivan. I think, would it be perhaps helpful if after tomorrow's briefing, when they come up and we have a discussion, that perhaps we could then set time aside after that so that we could sort of chew the fat on it, excuse the expression, if we could discuss it a bit further after the briefing perhaps, if there's time, of course. I know we are limited with our time.
Any other comments? Councillor Carol Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And it's good to talk about these things. I mean, I guess council, our community needs to be aware that probably the only thing that we could afford to contribute is land. But along Stuart's, one of the trips we went on, one of the, talking about the Brisbane, I think it was Brisbane housing, that there's even the opportunity to provide, and they did, and the ones went, providing affordable housing for our first responders like nurses and others like that, which sometimes, you know, cannot afford as rentals go up to, it's not just about social housing, it's about providing affordable rentals for the people who actually contribute so much to our community. So I think we have had preliminary discussions. I know we're all aware of that, but I think it's important that we recognise that, you know, and we're at the lower end of the funding scale and we haven't got a lot of money, and social housing is the responsibility of the state and federal government. But having said that, we are in touch with our community, and it would be wonderful if we can partner with one of these groups to bring some of this mixed housing to our community. So I think we're all in favour of that. Thank you.
Yes, what inspired me was obviously the support that will come out of that building in Hume Street for those who need support, but the benefit also to this community at many levels, including the fact that it was built by local construction people. Councillor Von Hoff, you had a question?
I do, Mayor. At the end of last year, Stuart, Council met with members of the Chamber of Commerce and Advanced Toomba to discuss some of the numbers that were underpinning some of our planning assumptions. It was a productive meeting, and at that time there was a commitment given to meet again. I thought it was in January, to keep working through those numbers. Is that meeting still going ahead? And if so, when is it?
Yes. Basically, we're trying to get, I think the general understanding was that Heath and Andrew Bullen would meet to work through the various criteria that would be used as a basis for doing any modelling. And then we'd have a further meeting with those folk and maybe other development industry people that wanted to come along to discuss the outcomes of that. So that's being put in place at the moment. I spoke to Michelle yesterday afternoon, fairly late, about 5 o'clock, and she'd been trying to get in touch with Andrew to set that up, but hadn't at that point been able to get in touch with him. But
Okay.
she's still trying.
Okay, thank you for that. I found it helpful as a councillor to hear
That was
some of
quite a
those
good
conversations
meeting. Yep.
because I'm not a planning expert. And when I heard Rob Weymouth speaking about the medium density numbers, when I see 46 on a page and then I see a contrasting number of, I think it was 12, I don't understand the meaning behind those numbers. But I can hear from people in the industry and then understand more.
Yep.
So as a councillor, being privy to those conversations where we understand more about the numbers, that's really helpful because then that instructs our questions and we can just understand the whole issue a lot better.
That's right. No, couldn't agree more.
Are there any more questions for the GM? Councillor Nancy?
Thank you. So just to follow up with that, if I could please, Stuart, when do you foresee our next meeting with all of us in the room happening once Heath and Andrew sit down on their own? When do you see...
I can't give you a specific date, but we are really anxious that we get that done as soon as possible.
Good.
Because we want to move on. We have a huge agenda
Yep.
with the planning scheme
Yep.
and the growth plan, which underpins the planning scheme. So, we want to do that as soon as possible.
Excellent,
So,
because I think we all want
February,
resolution.
hopefully, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Summerfield. Are there any more questions for the GM? If not, would someone like to move the receipt of that report, please? So Councillor Megan O'Hara-Sullivan, Councillor Carl has seconded that. Any questions? Those in favour? It's carried. We move now to item 9.2, which is the water and waste services. Damien, over to you.
Good morning, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors. Take the report as read, sir, and ask any questions.
Any questions for the GM in respect to his report? Councillor Shine.
No, thanks, Mayor. I sent a note to the General Manager last night, I think, just asking, could he look into the Greenmount issue that councillors, including myself and Councillor Von Hoff and Councillor O'Hara-Sullivan, visited a group of people on a couple of occasions out there of recent times about the quality of the water. I thought it had been addressed here, but I couldn't find the mention of it in the minutes of the last general meeting. But I was just wondering if you are in a position to give us an update as to any progress being made to satisfy the complaints of those residents, please.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Shine. Yes, in late November, early November, there's 3 bores servicing Greenmount, Gilbride, Halden and Watts Siding. Watts Siding is a high hardness bore. We've actually turned that bore off and we're monitoring the supply out of the remaining 2 bores. That has significantly reduced the hardness in that system, but what we do have to watch for is in those 2 remaining bores that there isn't any hydrogen sulphide that comes through when they get a bit stressed. So at the moment we've received no complaints since we took that operational matter. Ultimately we are considering a long-term solution. This is a short-term solution, an operational response, but there is a plan to bring a paper to council on a longer-term solution for Greenmount.
Are there any further questions for the GM? Councillor McDonald.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Through you to Damien. Damien, this is further down in the agenda, but you're there, so perhaps you can answer in regarding timing. Around the Audit Committee recommendations, the first of which is around a report or an update being provided to the Audit Committee in March around the financial implications of the dam upgrade project and Mount Kynoch water treatment plant upgrade, and new, of course, down the track. And I'll just, councillors really need to be given a session, an information session prior to that going to the Audit Committee. So just wanting to flag that and getting an indication from you when that may be able to come to council.
Thank you for the question, councillor. Yes, I don't have the date in mind to respond right now, but yes, my understanding was we have scheduled it, I thought, Wendy, but I'll send an email around with the date of that. Yes, we'll bring up our dam expert out of GHD who will present to both council and then the Audit and Risk Committee on the dam spillway. And then these are both the quarantine projects and the Mount Kynoch upgrade. It's a different set of consultants, but yes, we'll provide both those updates on those projects. It's very significant and important projects for Toomba's future.
Any further questions for the GM? Councillor McMahon.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Damien. Wondering if you could just fill me in briefly on the council's role in the clean-up of a storm that came through a few nights ago and how we are assisting in the waste of that with skip bins, etc. I'm just wondering what's been done and what we plan to do.
Councillor, we've taken some steps so that there was an announcement out, I believe, yesterday from Mr Mayor in relation to receiving material at Toomba Amara Road facility free of charge and from commercial in relation to the events of Sunday morning. So that's the steps that we've taken from a waste perspective. I can't really talk to the clean-up. I'm not aware of how the roads and the road sweeping is going.
Regarding the waste. Just following on from that, there seems to be a fair bit of a line-up at the dumps of late and, cars coming out waiting for ours to get in there. Is this standard practice or is there anything we can do to alleviate wait times at our Amara Road and the other regional ones, I'd assume, but mainly Amara Road? Can we do anything to help the waiting times to get in there?
We do monitor the line up there and there is an opportunity to open a second lane there, but we have to maintain bringing things over the weighbridge so that we comply with the waste levy requirements. We can't just fast track vehicles through in order to ease that congestion. There has been consultation with our roads colleagues in relation to that, and we do monitor that line-up. I'm very conscious of those intersections and that congestion. It is at peak time, some peak times. We had some issues, I believe it was April last year, somewhere around there, where it was particularly congested.
Sure. Okay. One final question, Chair, if I might, just regarding that we had 2 samples of detected of COVID a month ago in December in our water, or in our sewage rather. Given, I suppose, at this point in time where we have many cases of COVID in the community, is that a burden to keep doing it, and will you keep testing it? What's kind of best practice at this point?
Queensland Health has sent an instruction to us that they do not require us to continue monitoring for COVID at Watala. So we have discontinued that now. They were using it to monitor the flow of COVID by indication in sewage throughout Queensland. I'm unaware if that was a blanket instruction to all wastewater providers in Queensland or just a cohort of them. But we have discontinued that. Presumably they're happy now that they understand that it's in the community and that that burden, which is not significant, or that requirement to monitor is no longer required.
All right, thanks very much.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Melissa Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, GM Damien. Just a question about our waste facilities. I've had a few, ratepayers from the Ravensbourne area talk to me about the waste facility there that of late, or I don't know from when, we no longer man that site and the access is via a PIN, and this has had an adverse effect on the facility itself, as in quite messy and people not doing the right thing and putting waste scattered everywhere. Is this a trend that we're putting out across the region in our waste facilities, as in having a PIN pad, and how often are our facilities being monitored to ensure that there isn't waste scattered everywhere?
Thanks for the question, Councillor. In general, we've got CCTV and we monitor those events. So when we've seen non-compliances, we've gone back, and in particular in relation to, I think it's Ravensbourne, we issued a couple of warning letters to a couple of individuals who just used to back up the truck and dump things, back up the trailer. We've ultimately issued an infringement notice to one of those people. So yes, we're monitoring it. It is a transition. It is part of being a contemporary, modern, efficient provider of waste facilities throughout the region, which are appropriate to the density and the population and the catchment there. So the tiering of waste facilities and the monitoring of those is an ongoing piece of operational work. So yes.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Shine.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mayor. Just a procedural one. Just wondering, perhaps the CEO might be able to inform us, what part of these questions and answers are recorded as minutes in that we can look at down the track? I mentioned before that I raised an issue about Greenmount. I couldn't find it. Probably didn't look too hard, but I doubt whether it's there. But I'm just wondering, all the questions and answers about matters that weren't the subject of the issues raised by the General Manager in his report. They were outside of that. In the normal course, would they be recorded or reference to them be made at all? If not, perhaps some consideration could be given to it.
There's a couple of elements to that response. The whole of the meetings are live recorded and they're a permanent record, so you can go back and find that at any point in time in the future. And then it's at in the council's hands as to what decisions they make in relation to any of the reports that are put up. So in these cases, most of the time council's been making a decision to note the report. But if there are specific actions that council wishes to take, it would be a matter of moving a motion and getting the support of the council to put that. That would then officially be a council decision, and then that would have to be implemented, obviously, in accordance with my responsibilities and those officers that are relevant to that.
would there be a difficulty in going further to that than that to record, for example, the questions and answers on different topics that were raised today, just as highlighting the subject matter without going into detail about it, or not?
Technically, matters that are discussed should be on the agenda before you actually get into the session. So technically, the issues that are being discussed by the council are on the agenda, and for anything outside of that, you need permission to actually discuss those issues that are outside those things that are on the agenda. But these have been a fairly free-flowing exchange of information, which I think is relevant to council, staff, and obviously the community as well. So I think that's the case, but it would probably be fairly difficult to record all of the relevant conversations without council in each case making a decision about what it is they wanted to record, because potentially we could miss things because we think it's important or don't think it's important, and vice versa from the councils. So in a formal setting such as this, to just make sure that the record is accurate, besides having the recorded record which is there, and we can actually check that, and there are undertakings given by officers here that they will follow up issues as well and do that operationally. That can still obviously proceed, but it's easier, I think, and just keeps it much cleaner if councils want to make a particular decision about particular actions they want happen or proceeded with by officers, to actually just make that recommendation in relation to that particular incident or issue.
Thanks, Councillor Shine. Councillor Carl, you have a question?
Yeah, I'd comment, if I may, on the back end of the CEO's comment. I would have some real concerns as a councillor sitting around a table in a group report that is operational in nature and we've previously made decisions on, and if a councillor wishes to raise an additional subject, then that's fine, but they should then seek permission in general business item to raise it as a motion as per normal meeting procedure. Therein is my concern that if it's a question outside of the content of the report, then that would be seen to be the appropriate way to put a motion on the books if there's a desire for the majority of council to do so. Otherwise, we could spend the majority of the day on operational matters that are non-decision making in a decision making forum, of which we need to come together and discuss many other facets of the business of council other than group reports. I do have a concern, and I would hate to think that we would go down that track just on a casual basis. I would like to see it, if there is issues, that it's sought as a permission in general business, but even more preferably that it's put on as an agenda item prior, as the CEO suggested. And I would also go as far as to say there are many other avenues in which to raise residents' complaints or issues or concerns through the normal course process, through pathways, which is an official record and it's on the public record and it requires a response. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks for your comments, Councillor Carl. I think we've probably, if there is a matter that needs dealing with by way of resolution, that in terms of a decision, I think we can simply manage that. Any other questions for the GM? If not, would someone like to move the receipt of that report, please, the Water and Waste Services report? Councillor Summerfield has moved that. A seconder, please. Councillor McDonald. Those in favour? Motion is carried.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks very much, Damien. We've now, Mike, Infrastructure Services.
Good morning, councillors. Our Infrastructure Services Group report for December is been tabled for you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Carol Taylor has a question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, General Manager Mike. Just looking at your comment there on the traffic manager designs and the qualifications of suitably qualified people, what are our concerns there, and what's happening that's changed? There's obviously there's some the Ausroads Guide to Temporary Traffic Management has changed, and I know we were recognised for that. One of our staff members, Michael Courtney, put a tremendous amount of effort under your guidance, Mike. But what it's causing obviously quite a bit of concern, and we've got a number of incidences of unimproved, non-compliant work on sites. Could you just explain that to me? Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. Probably the easiest way to say is that over the last few years, the requirements under the UTCD for temporary traffic management have got more stringent, and I think industry in many ways is still catching up. And as these things change, just the qualifications now for temporary traffic management design is somewhat of about a 3-year process, where once it was a course, now there's various courses. There's a minimum 2-year experience phase that traffic management designers have got to obtain, and then those sorts of things. So in theory, even myself now, I can't sign off on traffic management, temporary traffic management designs, even being an RPQ engineer. It's gone further than that, and they want, there's significant requirements as far as that. That's on the design side. Then you move into the actual implementation of that traffic management, and there's a lot of work involved with that now, and cost for that matter, in ensuring a site, be it in the private industry space, a developer, or just even ourselves for any of our works in the road network. There's a significant cost component for temporary traffic management now.
If I could have a follow-up, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Should we hold or get some sort of a meeting together with our private contract, or the developers and private contractors, to make them aware? Because it seems to me that perhaps I've heard comment that council's over the top. At the end of the day, we're just ensuring what we have to ensure, I guess, and is it our job, or whose job is it to educate these people about, work with our people to educate them, to ensure that they have the knowledge and understand the new requirements?
That responsibility is very much with the individual companies. So they've got an obligation, a personal obligation and personal responsibility under workplace health and safety to be very much across any of the requirements of their job, including temporary traffic management. So their learning, their education and their understanding is one that each company should very much take on board. From a point of view of education, potentially it's more of a state. The state sort of, through Transport and Main Roads, controls or sort of authorises the MUTCD through its legislative position, and it would be, maybe helpful through that perspective. We probably don't have the resource capability, or capacity I should say, to be involved in getting, trying to educate locals. There is a fair interaction between our staff and local developers and industry, and there's always, like in many areas of council, a guidance and support and assistance given as people discussions occur.
Mr. Mayor, and if I could just add to that, would it be beneficial to everyone if we approached TMR, particularly the local ones here, and suggesting that perhaps they could hold some sort of I don't believe they have, but if they could hold some sort of a familiarisation with local people?
I'd be happy to discuss it with the local TMR office, see
Thank
if
you very
there's
much,
anything
Mr.
they'd
Mayor.
like to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Summerfield, and then Councillor Melissa Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mike. So just on page 4 or 5 of the report under the flood recovery program, Mike, the last dot point you mentioned a new flood event was activated with QRA at the beginning of December last year. The new flood event slowed progress on the February 2020 event. The full impact not known for months. I just wonder, could you help me understand why we have such a backlog in fixing our flood events? Because now we've moved on to the next flood event, but we haven't fixed the last one yet, which was February. And so I just worry how we're ever going to catch up, because we're going to keep having flood events, hopefully, because that puts water in the dams, ka-ching. But also I wondered, when we do these, and I go back to I think it was 2012, there was an introduction by the state government of betterment funding, so that any flood events, the funding included betterment, so that every project had betterment, ensuring that there's reduced damage the next time there's a flood event. And I just wonder, are we still trying to include betterment in our projects when we do these flood event projects? So 2 questions in that little one. Then I've got another one after that, Mr Mayor, but if Mike wouldn't mind answering that one, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Summerfield. Probably your first question is, it's a little bit deja vu, isn't it? 3 steps forward, 2 steps back with flood events. That's not dissimilar to the region. You know, we went to 2011 event, 2013 event, there was an event in 14, and another event in 15. So, and then we've gone through a period of being fairly dry through to 2018, and then we've had the 18 event, 20 event, and now 21 event. The processes are, as you're probably aware, are fairly set out through the disaster recovery DFRA stuff, that we've got to follow the guidelines that are there, and in Queensland that's through the Queensland Reconstruction Authority. And what you get, you've got various periods of time. So you have the emergent period following an event, which is approximately 3 months, and then during that period and past that period you're putting submissions together for the significant damage that has occurred to be rectified. The period they give is 2 financial years beyond the time that the event happened. So, for instance, the 21 event, all works have got to be completed and acquitted by, what's that make us, 24, mid-24. So that's why you get these overlaps happening. We do put a lot of work into trying to expedite the grant submissions, and they have moved quicker in recent years. There's a lot of system process stuff that we've got to do with that. We've got quite a lot of consultants and contractors on board to deliver these works as and when they become available. In respect to, and this overlaps into the betterment, for instance, out of the 20 event, we've got about 40 culvert projects across the region. All of those have been put out to market as far as design, and all have been put out to market as far as construction. So those tenders are rolling out, and there's that overlap. When it comes to, and they tend to be the projects that we then look at, seeing if we can improve from a betterment perspective. So on some of those projects, we've allowed some of our own capital works funding towards those various sorts of elements of work, culverts, etc., to improve them to a level that they are more resilient should, you know, another event come through in that location, so we're not going back. In respect to getting further betterment funding from the state government or federal government, because it's 75-25 still, there's a process to go through. And the process at the moment, in some cases, hasn't allowed us to apply for betterment funding. I've approached even only in the last couple of months the CEO of Queensland Reconstruction Authority to get further betterment funding. We are continually discussing that with them. Just recently, just right at Christmas actually, there's an announcement of some further grants. Those grants will probably be more applicable to projects such as maybe our Perth Street culvert or our Neil Street culvert and those sorts of larger projects. So in the background, we're dealing with those as well and looking at what we can put forward. So it's probably a bit of a long explanation there, but hopefully it's been helpful to give you some insight into some of the things that that need to happen in that process.
Thanks, Mike. And understanding workload and everything, obviously it's better if we can get it done in that first year rather than use the full 2-year window wherever possible, because people are impacted by it, everyday users or whatever are impacted. So that's good to hear what you've got to say there. So my second question was around the impacts of our roadworks on waterways, and I've brought this up before. What triggers us inspecting what we're doing on roadworks to try and ensure that we're not impacting on waterways? What does it take for officers to go out and investigate and see what can be done differently in relation to roadworks impacting waterways? This is an environmental issue and maybe it crosses over other portfolios, but I just wondered what we can do to protect our waterways and make sure that we're doing the right thing for the environment in relation to our roadworks.
Yeah, a very good question. Thanks, Councillor Summerfield. Look, a lot of work goes into the environmental management of our works. Just through the design phase, we do up environmental management plans, soil and erosion control plans. All these sorts of works all this gets considered through the design phase of any project. So that's probably the first element. Then through construction phase, obviously there's the implementation of those measures that have been designed into the job to improve, or where we can mitigate the impact of what storm events and others, particularly storm events, have on our works. A lot of effort goes into then the ongoing monitoring of those elements. And you would see what we call soil logs and different things like that in various table drains and different things. We then go, part of the restoration or the completion or rehabilitation of the job at the end is planting of seed and hydromulching and other work that we do to mitigate or to enhance growth. That in our urban projects will even turf out the bare areas. So we've got a full suite of, under our integrated management system, of processes and stuff. And I think I may have sent some stuff to council probably in the last 6 months, but I'd be happy to chase it up again, outlining some of the, the depth of effort that goes into mitigating impacts from an environmental perspective. Just a
comment on that for...
Questions lined up, Councillor
Sorry,
Carroll.
but just mentioning
Just
on
a brief
that,
comment, please.
Councillor Summerfield, Mr Brady's right. There have been 2 emails sent out to councillors on the environmental considerations that council's infrastructure services do, and also to the amount of water and where we get it from and stuff. That's happened in the last few months.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you, Councillor Summerfield. more questions?
Oh, thank you. I just wondered, I mentioned earlier about what triggers, like if all that planning has happened and the works have been done and everything, and then you still have an ongoing issue, what is the next step then to try and address that, I guess? Or what triggers trying to find a new way of dealing with the issue?
It's a challenge. Like majority of our soil conservation mitigation works that we do are designed in accordance with industry standards and practices. So, and that sort of is around about allows up to around about a 2-year event. But, you know, you get an event like, say, what comes through on Sunday night, and that just washes everything away, you know, and particularly on our roadwork sites, which are open to, you know, that sort of damage, unfortunately. The challenge there is probably cost, as much as anything, cost benefit of, you know, you can keep on sort of investing heavily into that mitigation works and trying to find that balance at the end of the day. So a lot of effort does go into it. It's I will say, you know, we get the storm events. It can be challenging at times, and we see the runoff that occurs in our road areas. I mean, we get it even in the urban areas off new building sites and different things like that, and you know, the sediment getting into our stormwater systems and stuff like that. So, but you know, I think there's, I can assure you, there is conscious effort going into it on every project that we do.
Councillor Melissa Taylor, you've got some questions.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, GM Mike, for your report. I note on page 5 at the bottom, you talk about the Toomba Region Sustainable Transport Strategy update. So I just really want to probably just flesh that out a little bit more and just highlight it to our community, that we will be asking for their engagement about this transport strategy going forward.
Yes, there is a refresh occurring, as council is aware, and there is a level of consultation program to occur with that in this quarter, as I understand. So I haven't got the actual details with me presently, but I can further advise council if so wish.
That'd be great. I just want to really highlight it to the community as well, that it's really important that we get their engagement and their feedback on the strategy going forward. So thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Councillor McDonald, you had, and then Councillor Shine.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to GM Mike. Mike, just a couple of little things. From a fleet perspective, it's obviously a challenge for us getting supplies. Have we looked at our extending of life of existing fleet through this? It's been forced upon us, naturally, because we haven't been able to probably source some new fleet, but is that changing the thinking of your branch in regard to the longevity of fleet?
I think we're always looking at, you know, we don't necessarily, there's a lot of planning from an asset management perspective on the replacement of the various items of plant and equipment that we have. And we tend to follow that relatively closely. That said, you know, we'll manage that with what the immediate challenges of the day are. And if that piece of plant hasn't got to, you know, if it's in good condition and working well and things like that, there may be an opportunity to keep it that little bit longer. I think some of our challenges at the moment are not only the supply of equipment, it's the price of all the repairs and material side. That, you know, councils would have seen just before Christmas the, you know, even additives to fuels and stuff like that have skyrocketed. The other element is our labour side. At the moment, we're having to outsource a lot of our repair work. Again, getting qualified tradespersons is very much a challenge. So we've got quite a number of vacancies there in the workshop. So we work very closely across the, particularly around the greater Toomba area, to work with various companies to assist in the work that we do.
Yeah, just a couple of follow-ups if I could. Mike, in regard to the storm on Sunday morning, we look at one of our values around teamwork, and I just want to acknowledge the clean-up efforts of your crew, but then, of course, right across the organisation, whether it's through ICT, property services, the aquatic facility, the gallery, wherever it may have been, through that early morning, in contact with a lot of people there. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
And leading from that, have you had any reports, engineer-wise or other, in regard to the effectiveness of the flooding mitigation, be it the detention basins or others, and how effective they were in that event?
Look, in respect to the main drainage system, the trunk drainage system, our detention basins and creeks and stuff like that, we didn't really experience any issues, in any specific issues. There is a little bit of erosion and a little bit of damage here and there that we've got to rectify. But the system itself worked as planned, as designed in regards to an event like Sunday. That said, the location of this event was very localised into a fairly, into the city centre. So the impact wasn't a whole of catchment impact to the same extent as it was within the city centre. I know, you just had to go north to Highfields or whatever, and there was no hail up that way. It was just heavy rain. The unfortunate centre of the storm, so to speak, tended to hit the centre of the city. I've heard reports of up to 100 mil of rain in that hour. So,
yep. In 40 minutes.
In 40 minutes, which is well in excess of even what we've designed our system to be able to take from a whole catchment perspective. So, that's a very intense storm, and that unfortunately does happen from time to time across everywhere.
Follow up if I could. Mike, in regard to that, and well done on your efforts there, because certainly travelling around you could see that things had worked, but if you see it a few hours after the event, sometimes it's changed since then, which it had. In regard to opportunities for building better regions funding, which is coming up, like round 6 closes on February 10, one of our flood measures, or probably an impediment into the CBD, is the Neil Street culvert. And keeping in mind that building better regions funds normally are 50% for our council, but I would maybe encourage, if it's a will, and I know it doesn't normally come to council, but certainly through an ELT perspective, there may be an opportunity to actually seek additional funding up to 75% for that particular project, keeping in mind that it needs to be completed by December 24, and it is in our capital works program. We've got some $15.6 million in the capital works program to do it. So it's ticking all the boxes as far as a project is concerned, and timing would be okay for it. And given that it is a federal government grant funding scheme and a federal election's not far away, it may be an opportunity for us to look at that. And the reason I raise it today is because we won't have another opportunity before that closure of the fund, the grant application. So I just flagged that and wondered if it was on your radar to actually put that in as a project.
Yeah, no, it definitely is on the radar. There's a couple of projects there, that being one of them. Yep. So that'll be, is being looked at presently.
Thanks, Mike.
Councillor Shine
Thanks, Mayor.
and
Just,
Councillor Von Hoff.
if I might refer you, General Manager, to page 30, which is the item on the Bridge Street Quarry rehabilitation. It mentions that detailed designs for the 2 preferred rehab strategies are being progressed. Any timeline on the conclusion of those design work, please?
I think from the Bridge Street Quarry Rehab Advisory Committee meeting that we had, I think it was in December there, not long before Christmas, I think we were indicating that we'd try to have these to position by around about March, I thought, if I remember correctly from that. But I can confirm where they're at and just advise accordingly.
Councillor, you finished, Councillor Shine? Yeah, Councillor Von Hoff.
Thank you, Chair. Mike, I'm reminded when you were just speaking before about council's AdBlue stocks, given the shortages nationally and internationally. Is that something that's concerning you? And, or if not, let us know. And if it is, what can we be doing and what are we doing to try and secure some more stock?
It's, we've had delays thanks Councillor Bonner for the question. We've had delays in getting certain materials, that being one of them, from time to time. I think our team